Matt Valley, and welcome to episode number 33 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Today's guest, Joel Rubinson, hardly needs an introduction. He has long been a change agent when it comes to the practice of marketing and marketing research. At his current company that he founded about 10 or so years ago, Rubinson Partners, he's led critical client engagements in topics like multi-source global brand tracking, cross-media optimization, market mix modeling, and a whole bunch of other things. He's also an adjunct professor at NYU, where he created the first MBA course on social media for brand managers. Before that, he was actually the chief research officer at the Advertising Research Foundation, the ARF, and his list of accomplishments and contributions to the industry go on and on and on. But what I really want to talk to Joel about today is his decades-long parallel career as a musician, playing bluegrass and rock and roll with lots of guys and gals, including another notable market researcher. And Joel is here to tell you all about that today. So welcome to the podcast, Joel.
Oh, thanks a lot. I just have to make sure the family knows that I'm being recorded. Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Nice talking with you.
Yeah, super excited to have you on, and lots of good stuff to talk about today. So let's start with how you got into the business of market research in the first place. How did that go down?
Okay. Well, I was one of the few students at the University of Chicago MBA program who didn't like finance. So I went to the University of Chicago because I was very attracted to the Nobel Prize winners who taught there in economics. So I took classes under Milton Friedman, George Stigler. It was great, you know.
That's amazing.
And so, you know, but then I decided, well, so I have a concentration in economics, a concentration in statistics, but I don't want to be an economist and I don't want to be a statistician. So what do? I didn't like finance, but I did like marketing. So I told myself that's the career path I want to go on. My first couple of jobs didn't quite hit the mark, but my third job after college was at Unilever. And that was really fantastic. I mean, the person who was the head of the department, Bill Moran, was like one of the thought leaders in the industry. And I don't know, maybe I'll even tell you one of my secrets was Bill he wasn't that accessible, but he was very motivating. So I knew his schedule. I knew how late he stayed, and I knew when he would go to the bathroom. So there were two urinals. So I would kind of follow him into the bathroom so I could get a few minutes of wisdom as we were talking. And then we developed a great relationship on economics and, you know, modeling, marketing, great relationship. And then, you know, it just kind of taught me how to think about marketing. I just somehow got it, you know, there was like something that clicked for me, and that was really the start of my career, and I kind of went on from there. So that's how I got into it. It's always a little serendipitous, I think, in marketing research, you know? Yeah,
how so?
Well, there aren't really too many like formal marketing research programs.
Yeah, right.
You know, certifications and things like that, where it's not like becoming a doctor where, you know, or a lawyer, we have to study for X years through a regimented program, take certification exams and things. So I think people come into marketing research from core disciplines, and they just find it in different ways, you know, and you can get people in a room in a marketing research department, and, you know, someone like me came from an economics background, somebody else came from a psych background.
Right.
I had a guy work for me who was a great advanced analytics guy, you know, great with math and all kinds of stuff. His background was philosophy, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from an Ivy League school. But I mean, you know, he didn't study anything relating to marketing. So you just kind of, so he wound up going into it through agencies, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And so people get into this profession in different ways. And I'd say now, I mean, I'm still kind of I'm from Brooklyn, even though I don't live in Brooklyn. I'm from marketing research, even though I'm not sure I still live in marketing research because I do so much with, digital marketing and big data and stuff like that. But, those genes are still in me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, speaking of serendipitous, uh, somehow you also found your way as a musician. So tell us about how that came about.
Okay. Well, so my journey into music started really with bumming around South for a couple of weeks with friends. And we went to this fantastic club in Nashville. And, I got so jazzed up about playing music. I had never played an instrument, but I love singing and whatever. So, so that club was very motivating. And then after Nashville, we went on to New Orleans, and then we went to like Preservation Hall, and so that like sealed the deal. I had to get into music, and so I started out singing and playing guitar, and then in the 90s, I was in like a coffee house band where everybody's playing guitar. So I said, I got to add some variety.
Yeah.
So my father used to play harmonica. And although he passed away before the coffee house band, I was attracted to it, but I never got the hang of it. And then somehow I just decided to pick it up again, give it another try, and it clicked. You just, because, like when you play guitar, you can look at the strings, right? When you play harmonica, you can't look at the holes, they're in your mouth. So
Right.
there's something has to click, and it did for me. So that got me into that. And then a bunch of us were musicians at NPD. We formed a band called the Outliers, like Statistical Outliers. And
Nice.
we've been playing together for 25 years or more. And then in the early 2000s, my optician was a bass player in a Rolling Stones tribute band.
Okay.
And
Okay.
knowing I played harmonica and how important harmonica is to the Stones, he recruited me into that band. So
Cool.
I started playing with them in 2003 or 2004. So, before COVID, I was probably playing 40 gigs a year. Yeah.
40 gigs a year.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot when you're also, I mean, you're quite prolific when it comes to authoring blogs and papers and things like that.
Yeah.
How do you keep all
Sleep
that together?
optional. Sleep optional.
Sleep optional. Yeah. Hey, it's priorities, man. It's priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So what is your favorite kind of stuff to play?
Well, so definitely harmonica is my best instrument. It's what I think, if I'm doing a gig or whatever, that's what I stand out with. And so I'd say my very favorite thing of all would be playing Midnight Rambler with the Stones tribute band that I play in. So,
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so blues, I'd say blues harp, is my favorite thing. And I like going to jams, because you let the music take you somewhere. You just find a groove, get in a pocket and go, So I love that. And, I go to blues jams, I sing and play harp, do both of those things. So I'd say those are my favorite things. But, you're wearing a Johnny Cash shirt, and we were just discussing, I love country and I love Johnny Cash. I mean, Sun Studios is like it for me.
Mecca.
When I went to Memphis, it was, I had it in between meetings. I went for business, but in between meetings, I had to go to Sun Studios. It was like a religious experience.
Yeah.
And you've been to Sun Studios, right?
I have. The tour is it's fantastic.
The acoustics, I don't know if they knew what the hell they were doing, but I can tell you the acoustics where they do the recording, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like better than the best digital effects you could imagine, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a religious experience.
Yeah, I mean, it still looks like a 70-year-old recording studio as well. It looks like it's
Yeah,
out there.
but it's an active studio, right?
Yeah, yep,
Like,
yeah,
didn't
it is.
you two record an album there, or, you
Yeah,
know? So yeah, it's
yep.
really an amazing place. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you've had these two things in parallel for decades. Are there any lessons you draw from like music that you apply to your professional life or vice versa? Or are they just two totally separate tracks?
You know, well, they're certainly separate, but you know, you always pull from one life experience and into another, you know, and so I try not to like talk business when I'm playing music. You
Hmm.
know, I want to keep it to music. But sometimes business intersects, and then other times it's just, you know, it's just a lesson about playing nicely with others too. You
Yeah.
know, like you have to be a team player in life. You have to be the kind of person someone wants to play with, someone wants to work with, or
Hmm.
in either case, they'll find a way to, you know, to avoid you. So, you know, when I started out, I would say in music and maybe in business too, you know, you have a strong ego, and you know, sometimes you want to have it fed, and I it doesn't work very well. So
Yeah.
I've kind of moved on from thinking that way. But no, you know, music is it teaches you discipline, structure,
Yeah.
how to be a team player. You know, if I was singing and playing guitar by myself, I wouldn't get nearly the attention or whatever
Yeah.
versus you know, being with a great band.
Yeah.
And I will to say one funny thing that happened. So for 8 years, I was playing with the Rolling Stones tribute band, never discussed business, right?
Right.
One night in between sets, the lead singer, Mick Jagger, quote unquote, right? Does a great Mick Jagger, by the way, starts talking with me. He says, "You're in marketing, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, and I started telling him a little bit about what I do. I said, "You know, Pete, I never really understood what you do." Well, it turns out he was the managing director of a technology VAR, you know, value-add reseller,
Okay.
and they have clients like Bloomberg. I mean, you know, pretty
Oh,
big
wow.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he managed. Anyway, they were getting into big data, and they realized that a lot of times it's the marketing organization, the CMO, who makes big data IT-based decisions, right?
Right.
They said, "We don't know anything about marketing. Maybe you could help us." So, so I like to tell people I made a lot of money at music.
That's
They recruited. I mean, because I wound up being a consultant to his firm, actually.
free drink tickets and $100,000 contract.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of along those lines, right?
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let's go back to the work side then again.
Mhm.
You've always been, I would say, actually a contrarian. I've liked a lot of what you've written. Oftentimes, it challenges the conventional wisdom of marketing and marketing research. So what's your take on you know, I mean, we have big data, we have social media, we have all these sources. Just what does the future kind of look like from where you're sitting for research and marketing? Big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Well, no, that is a big question, and yeah, I would say, am I a contrarian? Maybe. I like to think that I'm an agent of change who's willing to express an opinion that he knows will be met with resistance,
Hmm.
but I do it anyway,
Right.
you know? And so I don't say things just to be a curmudgeon or whatever, but I do have maybe a little more lean forward way of looking at things sometimes. And I mean, you have to go for it. Like I I was invited into this invitation only event at Wharton, which was the Future of Advertising, is what it was called,
Okay.
by organized by Professor Jerry Wind. And so you have research directors from everywhere and leading professors and in this group of 50, 60 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at one point I started, and this was really before the rise of programmatic advertising.
Okay.
But I started to talk about how I thought the science of advertising as it related to media might be more important than creative. And one of the reasons I said that is because if you get it right based on the math of placing advertising,
Mm-hmm.
it's repeatable success. Whereas if you
Right.
get it right in terms of creative, it's lightning in a bottle, you know? And
Right.
it's like everybody at that conference was talking about the Old Spice man on a horse thing.
Right.
And, you know, you realized the reason why everybody was referring to the same campaign is because that's the only one like that. No, if you knew how to create it, everybody would create their version of it. But it's the you know, so you have that, and you have like to teach the world to sing, and Excedrin Headway. I mean, it's great creative is like lightning in a bottle. Of course, you have to strive for it, but great media strategy based on math is reproducible. So anyway, the at the time I had a very big consulting gig with Coca-Cola to help them redesign their global tracker.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan Nathan, who's the global head of research, who actually brought me in to Coke to do this, right?
Right.
He pulled me aside after I said this, and he said during the break, he said to me, "What are you saying, man?" Well, at the time, I didn't know to articulate, you know, that it was programmatic and addressable marketing. And most recently in October, we introduced a whole new brand growth framework that is proven to deliver 50% increase in ROAS, return on ad spend. And it's based on targeting a segment we identified called the movable middle, which has 5 times the ad response. And that relationship actually comes from math. It comes from calculus. So I won't go into all the details, but the point is that is reproducible success. So I guess 6 years ago, whenever that happened, you know, I was right, but I didn't quite know how it was going to materialize yet. And so it's not that creative isn't important. It's just that it's one of, you know, 4 or 5 factors that are of equal importance. When you get them all right, you know, then it's like hitting a 500-foot home run, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, but if you don't get the targeting part of it right, and the media strategy parts of it right, you know, then the creative will, it'll still allow for the campaign to do better, but not as good as it could have been. So there's a lot more I could say about that, but I'm sure that's not what you want to dig deep into today. So, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, long before we met, I've been an admirer of your writing.
Thank you.
And you mentioned leading brand tracking at Coca-Cola at the time. I was running a tracker for a large global consumer goods firm for a notable supplier, and I saw the stuff that you were writing, and in one sense it made me super excited about the future of what brand tracking could be, but it also made me pretty nervous about what we were doing at the time.
Well, you know, good. That's the idea. You know, one of my favorite quotes comes from a writer, H.L. Mencken, in the 1920s, who was at the Baltimore Sun, I believe. And he said his mission was to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. So, you know, I mean, I think it's great if people who are running large tracker programs, if something I said made them think again about, you know, the stuff they don't otherwise think about. You know, listen, in marketing research, when you're running a business, a marketing research business, you always want to try and productize things. Right. So when you productize things, you try and standardize things. And, you know, when you standardize things, it doesn't allow, the business model doesn't allow for a lot of customization and, you know, really original kind of thought, because you're kind of breaking the profitability model. Now, some people do it. I would do it often, and, you know, Maybe others would as well. But if you can get people to think, you know, with a fresh perspective about something, you know, I was consulting with one of the large research firms, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever, to help them redesign their tracking program. And, you know, so I looked at their tracking program and, you know, it was perfectly competent.
Right.
It was like a tracker should be, and so many are. You know, you had the awareness questions and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? The tracker, there was no integration of survey information with digital information.
Right.
There was no attempt to find the intersecting truth from the survey data with social media, with digital, you know, exhaust information. There was nothing in there about shopping. So, you know, when we talk about, you know, awareness and preference and whatever, it kind of follows the funnel, right?
Yep.
But I like to think also in terms of journeys.
Yep.
Especially in digital. People go through behaviors that have you know, it has a rhyme and a reason to it. It's chaotic sometimes because you see a link, you click it, and you go somewhere you didn't think you were going to go. But there still is a pattern to it. You know, you start with search, and, you know, you might start generically or you might start branded depending on how strong your brand preferences are. There's a pattern to the chaos, you know, and so that should be included in tracking programs. And you know, when I've consulted with marketers directly or with this research firm, you know, I tried to include some of these elements. Now, of course, you can't go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, right?
Right.
So, you know, you have to stage things, but yeah, but I feel, you know, I'm gratified that the direct work I do is well received, but also, you know, we had never actually met before this, right? And so, you know, but to hear that I had some impact on your thinking and about how you approached your relationships, it's actually like really, really gratifying to me. So thanks for sharing that. You know, I appreciate it.
So that leads me to the next question, which is, what kinds of media or maybe personalities, podcast blogs, do you look to for inspiration or even enjoyment?
Well, okay, that's a very interesting question for a variety of reasons. First of all, I happen to really love what I do. I mean, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a baseball player, right? Love baseball, love watching it, and I love playing it. I was on NYU's team. I was a pitcher a long, long time ago.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, and then I was working out with a scout for Cincinnati. But the problem is these guys have such pinpoint control. All I could do is try and throw a strike. So, you know, I had a really, really good fastball, but I didn't always know where it was going to go. And it turned out that's a metaphor for me, for my business. That's Joel again, really good fastball, but who knows where it's going to go. So anyway, okay, now I forgot the question. What did you ask me?
What do you turn to for inspiration?
Oh, yeah. So I love what I do. And in the past year and a half, I tried to turn COVID into a real opportunity. So I said, okay, I'm stuck at home. I mean, normally I work from home anyway, but I would go into the city or I get on planes, I visit clients, but I'm home. I can't go anywhere. What am I going to do? And I happened to pick up an assignment from an ad tech firm that had a lot of data scientists. They were kind of in startup mode with capital behind them. They had data scientists, but the data scientists are not necessarily statisticians and they don't necessarily understand marketing. So they retained me to have me help structure the team and their approach to what they were doing in finalizing their offer, and then to write a white paper off of it. And so, so that was great. But what happens is if you don't say anything, people always assume your skills are maybe a little bit broader and more current than they actually are.
Yeah.
So when I looked at what these people were doing, and there were, big data elements to it and Bayesian elements and wisdom of crowd stuff and whatever, I really started to dig back into the books and into videos of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done things in the past year and a half. Hey, I'm not close to school age anymore, but I've done things over the past year and a half that are employing advanced math stuff that I had never even used before, because it's just, that's where the assignments took me. That's where my thinking took me.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I like reading the Medium blogs and newsletters. So I focus on the data science stuff a lot. I'll find YouTube videos that reinforce that. I subscribe to Great Courses Plus, which actually has some really good stuff on, like linear algebra and Bayesian stats and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the stat courses there, everything is about, going through the principles, and now here's how you do it in R. So I've used R and Python in the past year and a half much more than I ever did before. I used to use SPSS, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm a consultant on my own. That's kind of expensive, and so all of a sudden, seeing you can do virtually anything in R that you want to do, I kind of switched over. So that's largely, and then I get, emails from Media Post, the trade journal stuff, Ad Age and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Quirks, which comes to me in the mail and comes to me in email. But I would say I don't follow too many blogs, or in terms of books, books that had some big impact on me would be, well, of course, Moneyball. Everyone has to say Moneyball, right? But I actually did stuff that was sabermetrics, like when I was at the University of Chicago, before anyone ever heard of Bill James. I just didn't know you could actually make a living at it. I might not have gone into marketing research if I knew you could, because I actually built, there's something in sabermetrics called wins above replacement, which is like the key metric. That was actually the basis of my paper in 1972 when I was in college. It was the basis of the paper, was that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and no one had ever heard of Bill. I just didn't ever think you'd make money. I was just saying, okay, I got to do a term paper in stat, and hey, baseball statistics are all available, so let me go for that. So there's that, so, and then occasionally books will come by me, like one that was on, how the whole digital advertising world was evolving. It was great. And, the onset of programmatic. So I kind of, I read articles, I read the book, I got it, and I'll look for advanced math stuff. And now that I've been practitioner for so long, I see the applicability of this. Like I never had a clue, other than factor analysis kinds of stuff. What do you use an eigenvector for? Now I have all these applications that I've actually built that use that eigenvector decomposition of large matrices for other kinds of stuff that I never studied in college. Back then it was always like blocks on springs and predicting motion and stuff like that. So now it's relevant to me because I have use cases in mind. So anyway, so that's that's a long-winded answer, but I don't have anything really habitual. I get to Google alerts on topics that are important to me where I have assignments like multi-touch attribution. But I'm open to suggestions, by the way, if you have.
Well, I think it's really fascinating that, like you said, you've used this time to actually continue to evolve your learning on your core business and just keep pushing the envelope and you know, adding more perspectives to the work that you've been doing.
Yeah.
So that's
And
great to hear.
part of the trick is take on assignments that make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Because if everything you do is completely comfortable,
Yeah.
it's going to get pretty boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you get
So
stagnant in a fast-moving world too.
that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think about, you know, where I was, like when I was the chief research officer at the NPD group,
Uh-huh.
you know, and the models I built back then and whatever, I think about those and, you know, the stuff I do now, I'm not sure that the Joel of 2002 or whatever would even understand easily what I'm working on now.
Right.
But the digital world was, you know, people were still looking at digital like it was linear TV.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, it's like, what's the ratings of this website, that website,
Yeah.
and you know, I once heard a professor talk about innovation, and he says people always think of new technology in the context of old technology
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And he made the point that it was 15 years before someone, from the advent of movies, before someone thought to shoot a close-up.
Wow.
And the reason for it was just a play.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
a play on film. Well, you don't have close-ups when you're watching plays, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, so anyway, so, but I love trying to find those transformations, um, and not just for transformation's sake, because it's adding, you know, economic or commercial value. So
Right.
anyway,
Yep. That's a great way to look at it. Okay, now the all important question, Joel. So you're a musician, right?
yeah,
You've got musical passions.
yeah,
So let's say you're stranded on a desert island, right?
okay,
Someone has granted you 3 records of your choice to keep you company the rest of your days. What are those records?
okay. So the first two, I know exactly what I'm going to say.
All right.
The third one is like a 20-way tie. So the first, I'll tell you what I chose as my third one, but I want to mention some of the alternates. Okay.
Okay, but
So
I'm still going to hold you to the 3. So the others.
okay,
are
so
just
here's the
honorable
3. Okay, I got 3. Here's the
All
3. Number 1, the band Brown album, the one that
Interesting.
had
Interesting.
Jemima Surrender and Night They Drove Old Dixie Down and Cripple Creek, which was one of my favorite songs of all time. So the band,
Yeah.
that's number 1.
Great.
Okay. Number 2 would be what I think is the greatest bluegrass album of all time, which is Old and in the Way, which started as a side project for Jerry Garcia.
Right. Right.
He's playing banjo on this, you know, and
Yeah.
he pulled together these unbelievable musicians. Vassar Clements, who's like, you know, a jazz genius on violin or fiddle,
Yeah.
brought into bluegrass music. And in fact, the greatest lead break I've ever heard doesn't come from Clapton or whomever. It comes from Vassar Clements on the song Midnight Moonlight on that album.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, so that's number 2.
I got to
Okay.
that one. Okay. Yep.
Number 3 is the first Paul Butterfield blues band album I ever got. And I choose that one because, listen, I play blues harp. I mean, that's what I love to do when I'm on stage and I can, you know, play some amazing lead breaks and see the reaction of people. So I gotta pick blues harp album.
Sure.
There's a lot of great ones, but I guess I'll go with Paul Butterfield.
Okay.
So that's it. Now, so those are my 3.
All right.
But what I'm really sad that I didn't have room on the island for would be Willie Nelson's Redheaded Stranger.
Nice. Yes.
Which is a Western told in audio form. I mean, it's an amazing thing. I'd pick, well, you're sure, Johnny Cash. I'd pick Johnny Cash's Grammy award-winning Unchained album.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Unbelievable. And, you know, and there's 2 others that I really would love on my island if the island was a little bigger. Sticky Fingers, which I think is by far like the best Stones album of all time, and one of the best albums, period. And the other thing is, I would love something by Chris Stapleton, who was so
Oh.
transformative to music.
Yeah.
And I probably would pick Traveler, his
Okay.
first album that won all the awards, the Grammys and the Country Music Awards and everything. But he's just, he has invented music in a way that defies definition. He's a gender busting and bending guy.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you know about Chris Stapleton, but he's truly amazing. So anyway, so that's my desert island. If I have time, by the way, I have a desert island joke to tell you.
Let's hear it.
Okay.
How can I refuse?
Okay. So I told you that, my MBA is in economics, right?
Right.
Okay. So a physicist, a chemist, and an economist are stranded on a desert island. The shipwreck and they get stranded. Okay. And the only thing that washes ashore is a can of food and matches that miraculously stayed dry, right? But no can opener, okay? So the chemist says, okay, this isn't bad. We can start a fire and we put the can on the fire and I could tell you how long it's gonna be before the can explodes.
Okay.
And the physicist says, okay, and I can tell you from the angle of the can sitting in the fire and the amount of pressure, I can predict the trajectory. So I know where to be so we can catch the food, as it explodes before it hits the ground. Okay. And the economist says, well, let's assume we have a can opener.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Love it.
Yeah. Okay. I had to share that. Why not?
Now that is a first on the podcast, is the desert island joke. So I thank you for that one.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad. I like to be revolutionary.
Awesome.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, super fun conversation, Joel. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom and your stories along the way, and rock and roll.
There we go.
Yes,
you got it. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Joel.